There comes a time in every nation's history when one moment changes the direction of its future. A moment that begins quietly, unnoticed by the world, but grows into something too powerful to ignore. For Africa, that moment began the day Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward, not as a politician, not as a celebrity, but as a young man who refused to let his people be defined by fear. He didn't inherit power. He earned it by standing where others hesitated, by speaking when others stayed silent, by choosing courage over comfort. And that single choice sent shockwaves across the continent. Because Traoré did not rise in a polished suit or from a wealthy dynasty. He rose from the soil, from the dust, from the same struggles his people lived every day. And when he spoke, his words didn't sound like rehearsed politics. They sounded like truth pulled straight out of the heart of Africa. He talked about dignity, about sovereignty, about unity. He talked about the Africa that existed before colonizers arrived, before borders divided families, before outsiders wrote stories that didn't belong to the people. He talked about the Africa that had been silenced, but never defeated. And people listened. Not because they were told to, but because they felt something in his voice. Something raw, something real, something that reminded them of everything they had been forced to forget. It wasn't the tone of a leader demanding loyalty. It was the tone of a brother, a son, a comrade calling his people to stand with him. But what shocked the world was not just the hope he inspired, it was the defiance he embodied. Traoré refused to kneel before foreign pressure. He refused to bow to old systems designed to keep Africa locked in poverty, debt, and dependence. He challenged the power structures that had rested untouched for decades. And each challenge sent ripples across the world. Analysts couldn't predict him. Politicians couldn't control him. And the organizations that once dictated Africa's future suddenly found themselves powerless before a young leader who had only one master, his people. The world watched in disbelief as Burkina Faso, a country often ignored on the global stage, suddenly became the center of a new African conversation. Young Africans from Kenya to Nigeria, from Mali to Congo, began to look toward Ouagadougou, not for guidance on what to think, but for proof that their generation could lead. Because Traoré became living evidence that age does not limit wisdom, and that power does not come from wealth, it comes from conviction. He walked among his people without fear, without distance, without the layers of intimidation that follow most leaders. And when a leader stands shoulder to shoulder with the people, the bond becomes unbreakable. This is why the movement surrounding Traoré continues to grow, not like a political wave, but like a cultural awakening. He restored a truth Africa was forced to forget, that unity is strength and identity is power. He reminded millions that no empire lasts forever, no oppression is eternal, and no continent should live under someone else's shadow. Traoré didn't just speak about this, he lived it. He lived it in his decisions. He lived it in his alliances. He lived it in the way he defended his land, unapologetically and without hesitation. And now, the world is witnessing something historic. A young leader transforming into a symbol of resistance, a symbol of hope, a symbol of a continent ready to reclaim its voice. And what makes this moment so extraordinary is that the movement is not dependent on him alone. He sparked it, but the people are carrying it. The youth are spreading it. The truth is fueling it. And no amount of pressure, propaganda, or political manipulation can put out a fire that has already reached the hearts of millions. This is not just a rise. This is a rebirth. A rebirth of pride, of courage, of African identity. And when future generations read the chapters being written today, they will trace the starting point back to a young man who stood fearlessly in a world that expected him to remain silent. Ibrahim Traoré, the fire starter of a new era, the voice of a continent awakening, the reminder that Africa does not need permission to rise. This story is far from over. In fact, it has only just begun. Because what he has started is bigger than one nation, bigger than politics, bigger than borders. It is the awakening of a continent that has long been silenced, overlooked, and underestimated. Africa is remembering its strength, its history, its courage, and its power. And Traoré is the spark lighting that remembrance. He walks not as a ruler above his people, but as one among them, sharing their struggles, feeling their pains, and carrying their hopes. Every speech he gives, every step he takes, every decision he makes reverberates through villages, cities, and nations, igniting a fire of pride that cannot be contained. Young Africans are watching him and seeing themselves reflected in his courage. They are learning that leadership is not about titles or wealth. It is about heart, integrity, and the willingness to stand when everyone else hesitates. Communities once divided are uniting under the vision of a future that belongs to them, not to foreign powers or outdated systems. Traoré's presence is a declaration. Africa is no longer waiting for permission. Africa is claiming its place on the global stage. The world watches in awe, fear, and curiosity. Some do not understand how a young leader from Burkina Faso can challenge centuries of narratives. Some worry about the rising confidence of a continent that refuses to be underestimated. But Traoré is not seeking approval or sympathy. He is delivering truth. Truth that has been buried under decades of oppression, exploitation, and manipulation. And that truth is infectious. It spreads through the hearts of millions, growing stronger with each passing day, fueled by the shared memory of what Africa was, what it endured, and what it can become. Every time he speaks, it is a masterclass in courage. Every time he stands with his people, it is a lesson in solidarity. Every time he defies expectation, it is proof that power does not need permission, it needs purpose. The fire he ignites is not temporary. It is the beginning of a movement that will echo through generations. Traoré is not just shaping the future of Burkina Faso, he is shaping the future of an entire continent, showing that Africa can rise on its own terms, guided by its own vision, and led by its own heroes. And so, this story continues, unfolding like a thunderstorm on the horizon. The chapters ahead will be more powerful, more unyielding, and more historic than anything the world has seen before. Africa has begun to awaken, and Ibrahim Traoré stands at the center, fearless, unwavering, and unstoppable. The dawn of a new era has arrived, and this time, the continent will rise not quietly, but with the roar of a giant finally standing tall.